Today's lesson is all about stenciling. Stenciling is a printing technique for reproducing designs by passing paint over shapes, words, etc. that have been cut out into a stiff material such as cardboard or paper. Stenciling is a quick and simple way to reproduce the same pattern over and over again. The main idea of a stencil is that it can be reused many times. Stencils can be used on walls, paper, fabric, skin, and many other surfaces. There is a wide variety of stencils that can be purchased, from letters to numbers and patterns. But creating your own stencils can produce some unique designs that you get to call your own. These are the tools and materials needed for stenciling. Knives and blades are sharp. Do not run or play while using a knife. Children under 12 years must be assisted by an adult. Step 1. Creating your design. Start off with something simple. Then, gradually increase the complexity of your design. You can choose to do a silhouette or outline of your object. You can even do a multi-layered stencil, which combines both the silhouette and an outline. When creating your design, it is important to pay attention to the positive and negative space. The areas you want to be printed will affect the way you cut your stencil. For example, if you want the leaves to be printed, you must cut out the positive space. If you do not want the leaves to be printed, you must cut around the leaves, cutting out the negative space. As a result, the area around the leaves will be printed. In some designs, you may need to use bridges. Bridges are strips used to join parts or islands of your design that would fall out when you cut the stencil. For example, instead of leaving this triangular space unsecure, I can use a bridge to connect that part to the outer parts of the stencil. This helps your stencil to become more sturdy, and it also adds to the design. You can always go in after and fill in the spaces left behind by the bridges. Now it's time to print out or draw your final design on a sheet of paper. Step 2. Transferring the design. Transfer your design onto the stiff piece of paper using carbon paper. Do not place your design too close to the edge of the stencil. This will cause paint to get outside the stencil and soil the design surface. If you have decided to use a sheet of transparency film, you can now trace your design using a permanent marker. If you do not have transparency film, you can always use a plastic folder. Step 3. Cutting the stencil. For this step, be sure to use a cutting mat. It protects your work surface and prevents the blade from getting dull. Before you begin to cut your stencil, shade in the parts you want to be printed. These are the parts of your design that you will cut out. When cutting your stencil, do not use dull blades. You must also be mindful where you place your other hand while cutting. Take your time when cutting your stencil. Also, if you need to, rotate your stencil around until you find a comfortable position to cut. Step 4. Printing. If you are using spray paints, do so outdoors or in a well-ventilated area. If you are using paints, you can use a brush or a sponge. A stencil brush has stiff bristles, which are usually round and short. Before you print your design, use tape to hold your stencil in place. You will need a separate brush and sponge for each color you intend to use. Do not overload the brush or sponge with too much paint. Always test the sponge or brush on a spare piece of paper before. It is best to use stippling or dabbing motions when applying the paint. Do not drag the brush or sponge. This can cause paint to slip under the stencil and ruin your design. The great thing about using plastic material to make your stencil is that it can be used over and over again without becoming soggy. You can wash the stencil and store away for another time. Let's try using the cutout parts to create a print. Be very careful when removing the stencil. You don't want to smudge your print in the process. Did you notice that a negative stencil will produce a positive print, and a positive stencil will produce a negative print? There is a wide variety of stencils that can be purchased, from letters to numbers and patterns. But creating your own stencils can produce some unique designs that you get to call your own. That wraps up our lesson on stenciling. As always, I hope you learned something new. Thank you for watching. Let me know what topic I should cover next. And like, comment and subscribe for more art school videos.